Robert, thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Talking about kids, I actually wanted to start with your childhood.
Okay.
And I read that you came from a military family
Yeah.
and you guys moved around a lot. And I was sort of
Yep.
curious. Like, I know your kids will not live the life that you had, it'll be different, right?
Right.
But like, were there a couple lessons that you think about just from your upbringing that you reflect and think like you want to instill those in your kids, as they're growing up?
I mean, oh, May, that's a great question. That's a deep question. I like it though. I like where you're going with this. One of my famous or favorite lines that I use in TV today is whenever I see a guy make a big play, shakes a couple guys, I say he's got more moves than the military family, right? It's fun. It's a nice reference, but it also a reference to my own life. I was born in Okinawa, Japan. I lived, I think, in 5 or 6 different cities, from Olympia, Washington to New Orleans, Louisiana, ended up in Coppers Cove, Texas, spent some time in Alabama and South Carolina. And that's all just because of, the military makes you move. Your parents have to go different places and they're stationed at different bases. And what it taught me now as a 33-year-old man, I look at it and I say, it taught me how to adapt to different situations. So I was never in an environment that I'm ever uncomfortable with, whether it's white, black, Asian, Mexican, blue, brown, purple, it does not matter. I feel comfortable in those settings because I grew up in those different settings. I still haven't been back to Japan. So if any of my Japanese brothers and sisters out there watching this, get me back to Japan, please. I want to come back, experience the culture, talk to people, do sports, whatever it may be. I want to get back in some capacity. But to answer your question about the kids, for me, my parents in that military lifestyle really taught me and my 2 older sisters discipline, right? And when you say you're going to do something, you do it. It's a big reason why I have this don't quit mentality. My NFL career did not end up the way that I wanted it to. Come into the league, one of the faces of the league after winning Rookie of the Year, going to the Pro Bowl, and then injuries really impacted the rest of my career. But the fight through all of that to be out of the NFL for a year in 2017, get back in as like the 17th quarterback on the Baltimore Ravens roster and force them to keep 3 quarterbacks for the first time they had in 10 years. That meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to my drive. And I want my kids to have that similar drive that whenever they, face adversity, that they take it head on, because how you challenge yourself and how you approach overcoming adversity really impacts the rest of your life. You don't ever want to quit on something, because then now in your hardest of hearts, man, I really did quit there. So
Yeah.
what's going to prevent you from quitting in anything else? And I think that discipline from the military that my parents taught me and my sisters is certainly something I want my kids to have. But they also let us be kids. I didn't play sports like seriously till I was like 11 years old. I
Really?
wasn't, I played, don't get me wrong, I played baseball. Baseball was the first sport I ever played at 6 years old, probably
Yeah.
5, if I'm
Wow.
being honest. Played baseball at 5, played it when I was 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then got into basketball right around when I was 6 years old. But it was like city league basketball, small rims, no private coaches, not
Yeah.
going to the charter school to train to be the next child prodigy. I traveled around the US. My dad would throw us in the car, go pick our cousins up from New Orleans, because my whole family, outside of my intermediate family, still lives in New Orleans. And we'd drive around the US and we'd go see the Space Needle and we'd go see all these different things. And at the time, I thought it was really cool. I didn't realize we were driving because we were poor. But, it was a really cool experience, and I got to be a kid. So then when it was time to really focus and be like, okay, I want to be the next Michael Jordan, or I want to be the next, John Elway was my favorite quarterback back then. So John Elway or Randall Cunningham, whatever it may be, I was like laser focused and I wasn't burnt out. You start
Yeah.
these kids at 6, 7, 8 years old and they got these private coaches and they're doing all this stuff. They get burnt out by the time they're 16, 17 years old. They want to be a kid now. I got
Yeah.
that
Wow.
experience. I want that for my kids. We take them to Taekwondo. They just got their orange belts in Taekwondo. They're enjoying it, right? But it's fun. I don't have them going to tennis practice and practicing for 8 hours because I want them to be the next Serena Williams.
Hey,
who wouldn't want to be an X3 and Ones, but you get my point.
I,
I really want that for my kids.
I got to fill out the Taekwondo report card for my kids for the shell test this week. I hear you on that.
There you go.
I mean,
Teach them that discipline,
you don't brush your teeth. You don't get excellent. You get poor. I love that. Wait, so side question. Are you like a Japanese citizen then? Because you're born there?
Let's put it this way. I'm sure if I pulled some strings, I could pull that off.
Yeah.
But I had to make a decision, I believe, when I was 18 years old, to be a Japanese citizen. And it was explained to me this way. If I did that, I would then have to go serve in the Japanese military for a period of time. And at that time, at 18 years old, I was a freshman at Baylor University. That wasn't in the cards for me. Yeah, but I do call myself Blackanese because I'm, Black and Japanese. Although I have no Japanese blood, I do feel a connection to the people there, having been born there and lived the first 2.5 years of my life there. So I want to get back and truly experience it as an adult so I can actually understand where I was born.
That's awesome. I feel like you're looking at my questions because my next question was, I'm not sharing my screen. Am I, who did you
No,
want
you're not.
Who did you want to emulate growing up? And you said Elway. And so tell me why.
Yeah, so it's funny because you asked that question and it's a 2-part question. I didn't play football till I was 11. So 7th grade, 11, 12 years old. It's the last sport that I got into. I had already played baseball, like I said. I'd already started basketball. Everybody played soccer growing up. And I had already run track, actually. I ran track the summer before I started playing football. So really, it wasn't John Elway that I wanted to emulate. It was Michael Jordan. I was 6 years old, and I wanted to be the next Mike. That was the time in 1996 when all the Like Mike commercials were on, and they had Michael Jordan and Mia Hamm talking about anything you can do, I can do better, right? That was my growth moment, my growing up as a kid. So everything I did was to try to be like Michael Jordan. When I threw the football, put my tongue out. When I played basketball, I had my tongue out. And at times when I was doing TV, I've only been in TV for 2.5 years, but the first year, there were some times I was talking or saying something or making an expression or taking a picture when I was in the NFL. And the media team would be like, okay, we got to redo that because your tongue was out while you were doing this pose or whatever. And we just can't have that for the masses to see. So I really emulated Michael in everything that I did, worked hard, spent the extra time, the hours in the gym, even at a young age. It's funny, I tell the story a bunch, but I think it's a great story that encapsulates what I went through as a kid trying to be like Michael Jordan. I went to my dad when I was 6 years old. The junior high, not the junior high, the middle school, intermediate school that I went to is called Lovett Ledger. So they had this concrete, your normal concrete playground with 4 goals. And I go to my dad and I said, Dad, I want to be the next Michael Jordan. He's like, all right, let's go. We're going to go out to the concrete, jungle. We go out there. He makes me dribble with my left hand around the entire, court. And he says, you got to dribble with your left hand. You got to make 20 left-handed layups. Now, in 1996, dribbling with your left hand as a 6-year-old, not the most fun thing that you want to do. So I do it. And it took me like 3 hours, not going to lie to you. Took me like 3 hours to do it. I went home, cried to my mom. I said, he made me dribble with my left hand. I couldn't believe it. And then the next day I got up, I went to my dad and I said, let's go back out to the courts. Now this is a 6-year-old me. So I'm kind of shocked. Here at 33, I'm still shocked that I said that. I told him, let's go back to the courts. I did it in 20 minutes. The second day I did it in 20 minutes. When the previous day, it took me 3 hours. So it was at that moment, like, it wasn't my dad pushing me into sports that made me want to be great. I just had this vision for my life at a young age that I wanted to be the next great NBA star. So it was funny that I ended up playing in the NFL, and John Elway was a strong-armed quarterback, could make all the reads, could make all the throws, do the running, the spinning into the end zone touchdown that he had in the Super Bowl. And I wanted to do that. So my first football game ever, we won 60-6. And the only reason I was able to play football is because I convinced my mom that they wouldn't be able to hit me. And in that first game, I did not get hit. I was too fast and I threw the ball super far. And as a 7th grader, it was just like, all right, this is something that I can do. I'm good at it. I just didn't play Pee Wee football.
Yeah.
And that was why it was exciting for me.
Wow, that's amazing. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I've seen your gifs on my iPhone where you're sticking your tongue out. So it's funny when you're doing this one right here. Okay, so like a lot of what I talk about, write about, is like career advice, and I think there's so many parallels to like your career that I think people can learn from and kind of really apply it to their own life. And so I started thinking about this, right? I started thinking about your college scholarships.
Yeah.
And I read that you had 25 different authors. And lots of times I think people like will take a job and they don't really rank like, what are the 3 things or 5 things that are most important to me? How do I sort of weigh those?
Yep.
And I know one of yours was like, I'm going only to a school that will take me as a QB, not you call it an athlete or
not as an athlete. Yeah.
Okay. So like, how did you come up with the other 2 or 3, and how did you end up making that decision?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And honestly, I've never been asked that question before, but I do think it's important. I've spoken to guys that are coming up now to like have that criteria of what you want for your life. Now, I ended up going to Baylor University, but I was committed to Houston before that. And the reason I committed to Houston was because I was going to have a chance to play football, basketball, and run track. So for me, my criteria was, number one, I want to play football. I got to be honest with you, though. I didn't love football at that time. So I wanted to play football. I wanted to be a quarterback, and I wasn't going to play another position because I believed that I was a quarterback. So as teams came in, I got an offer from LSU, which was a huge offer, right? Obviously, it's a very prestigious school, but my family's from New Orleans. Baton Rouge is right down the road. It was a huge offer, but they wanted me as a wide receiver. So I turned it down. Now, they came back a few months later and offered me as a quarterback, but anyone out there that has ever gotten a job offer for one offer that might be deemed lesser, you understand that if they come back later with some made up offer of something that's greater, they're still probably going to try to put you in that first position. So I wasn't going to fall for that, trick from LSU, but it happened with Texas as well. Texas offered me as an athlete. Texas A&M offered me as a safety. Now, I say those are huge schools, but I also got big offers from schools to play quarterback. I mean, Tennessee offered me as a quarterback. You're talking about Florida State, Miami, Oregon, Stanford, UCLA. I had all the big schools that were interested in me in some type of capacity. But of those 25 offers, you're talking about 3 or 4 outliers that were for another position. So that was my first criteria. The second criteria was I wanted to be... Gotcha. Gloria, our daughter, got her musical excellence certificate today in school. So that's awesome. The first criteria was I wanted to play quarterback. And then the second criteria was how comfortable was I with the school and the coach? Because in today's game, you can't commit to the coach. You have to commit to the school. And if you're going to be happy, if he is not there, then that's the right school for you. And I had family in Houston that I knew was going to be around. Houston was close to New Orleans. It was close to where I grew up at. And I felt like I would be comfortable there. And then the third criteria for me was family. To be quite honest with you, I've seen a lot of guys in college. I'll take that back. It kind of goes back into the second criteria, but that family piece was important because I saw a lot of guys in college move far, far away. And it didn't turn out the way that they wanted it to go because they didn't have the support system there for them. And I wanted that. So at Houston, I knew I would be somewhat close to home, driving distance. And then at Baylor, I was literally an hour from home. So I graduated early, but every weekend, my first semester in college, I drove back home. I drove back home and I spent time with my family. And when the new freshmen came in the summer, then I was in college hanging out with my class per se, as we all grew together. So when I look at that third criteria, I have to say, like you said, first it's want to play quarterback. 2, it's the school, the coach, and proximity to family. And number 3 was education.
I love that. The thing I was thinking about again, I don't know if you can see my notes or something, but I wrote LSU down, and I think people see like, oh, I can work on Netflix, and it is a shiny thing, right? But
Yeah,
to your point, if it's not, I didn't know that they offered you the QB second, and that could have been, maybe they weren't 100% committed in the
correct,
beginning. So I love
correct,
that you
correct.
mentioned that, so I think that's great. Okay. So flipping it to, I want to talk about leadership. I know it's like a funny term, and I don't want to think about just players. I was thinking players or coaches that you've been around. What have you
Yeah,
noticed are like the common denominators of the best leaders in your experience?
I got you. Let me answer that education piece though quickly,
Yeah.
because I think that's important for anybody that's going to listen to this or gets a chance to hear it, because a lot of times players make decisions because they think they're all going to the NFL. And I was not hurt in high school. I was a very prolific athlete in basketball, football, and track. But I went to Baylor because I knew I was close to family, all the things that we mentioned, but they also had their own law school. And I wanted to set myself up just in case it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, that I could still take care of my family. So I went to Baylor and I was a political science major, and I graduated early in 2.5 years. And I went to grad school for communications, which I never thought I would use, but I'm using it. And I think people need to take that into account of, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to be the best at whatever it is I'm playing: football, basketball, track, softball, cheerleading, whatever. But I'm also going to be able to take care of myself when it's all said and done, because no matter what sport you play, you're always going to spend the majority of the rest of your life doing something else. So I think
Yeah.
that's important for people to take into account, and they should use that in their criteria to pick schools. But when you ask me the question of what are the qualities the best leaders have, to me, the best leaders know how to listen. They know how to respect the people that they're leading, and they instill confidence in them. So when I talk about listening, like the best coaches I've been around, they don't say, hey, this is my system and you're going to run my system. They find out what you're good at, and then they put you in position to be successful. So if I've got a wide receiver and he's 140 pounds soaking wet, and he can run across the middle, but it's probably not a good idea to run him across the middle, and he's super fast, I'm going to put him on the super fast routes and not run him across the middle. Too many times in life, if you take that analogy, we put people in places that they're just not going to be successful in. And then we get mad at them for not being successful in that position that we knew they weren't good at anyway. So I think that's part of the listening and putting people in position to be successful.
So
Learn. Yeah, go ahead.
who are some of those people that come to mind
Oh,
when you think
man.
about those?
Oh, I mean, lately, I think obviously my mom and dad, I think they were great leaders of our family. I think my last coach that I had in the NFL, Jim Harbaugh, he's really great at that. Got the best out of people, listened to people, and also made it to where you knew what to expect. Great leaders are consistent. They don't show up one day acting like Barack Obama and then the next day acting like Donald Trump. Like, you got to be consistent with who you are so people know what to expect. So when I show up, you're gonna get Robert Griffin every day. Whether you love that or don't love it, you're gonna know this is what I'm getting from this man. And I think the best leaders certainly do that.
Rick Williams once said that he always knew what Nick Saban expected of him.
Right.
Right. And he respected the heck out of that, which I love. Okay. If I asked Alfred Morris about you as a leader, what would you hope he says about you?
Man, I mean, you say that name and like, I'm so indebted to that man, because without him, that 2012 rookie year wouldn't have been possible. And I've said this on multiple occasions, but if there's one thing that I hope Alfred would say about me, was that I cared. And I took the time to get to know him. Me and Alfred were weight room buddies. We lifted in the weight room together. And when I tell you this man is strong, he is strong. But in 2012, we had a game against the Cowboys to finish the season, and it was a win in your end game or you lose and you go home. Winner's going to win the division and they're going to go to the playoffs. The loser is going to go home. And everyone's expecting Robert Griffin III is going to be the one that leads us to victory, and he's going to go off for 300 yards. He's going to run for 100 yards. And in that game, Alfred Morris ran for 200 plus yards. And at the end of the game, the fans are in the stadium chanting my name. And if there's one thing that I hope Alfred remembers, is that I started making them chant his name, because I knew how important he was to me. I knew how important he was to our team. And I thought that he certainly deserved that level of recognition in that moment. So I hope that's what he remembers. And I hope that he would say that I cared, because some people have said I care too much, but I'm always going to love on the guys that are in that locker room with me and that go through those battles with me.
That's amazing. I don't know if it was that year, but I saw he was like the second leading rusher. It was at a time where I stopped playing Madden. So I guess, I stopped looking at those like stats, super closely. But he was like, there's a stretch. He was like 1,400 yard rusher, which is amazing. That's cool.
Oh yeah. He was a beast.
What was your proudest football moment?
Ooh, proudest football moment. I know everyone will look at the Heisman and say the Heisman or the Pro Bowl and Rookie of the Year and all that. I would it's twofold, right? One is a very cool story from my last game in college. Played Washington. It was the highest scoring bowl games of all time, 67-56. And early in the game, I hand the ball off to our running back named Jared Salubi, and I followed him through the hole. Handed it off to him and like carried out my fake, but it just so happened that the hole where I was supposed to go was exactly where he ran. And he's running down the field 20, 30 yards. And I threw a block for him. Sped up, blocked the safety, like full, sold out, dove, gave the back, sprung him for a touchdown. And that was one of my proudest moments, because I didn't have to do that. Like in that moment, I knew I was going to get drafted. I was hoping that I would get drafted high. I didn't have to play in the game, but I still did, because it meant something to our team. It meant something to the guys that I had been there with. And coach came to me after the game and he said, most guys would have just Heisman that moment. They'd have been like, yeah, I'm good. I've won the Heisman. We've done all this stuff. I don't need to do this. He said, but you didn't. You put it on the line for your teammates in that moment to throw that block, and that meant the world to everybody that saw it. So that was probably one of my proudest moments. And then the other one would be getting back into the league in 2018. In 2017, I was out. I was throwing footballs at palm trees. I was throwing footballs to my wife out at UCF in Central Florida in Orlando. I was doing track and field workouts at Miami, just trying to keep myself in shape. And a lot of guys that get drafted very high, they wouldn't put themselves in a situation that I did in 2018, coming to Baltimore. And like I said, being the 49th quarterback on the roster.
Yeah.
But that was a proud moment for me, because I proved it to myself when no one expected me to be able to make that team, and no one expected me to stretch my career out for another 3 years. I did that through hard work and dedication when they didn't owe me anything. They had Joe Flacco. They had drafted Lamar Jackson. I was the least of their concerns. And I proved to them that I was worthy of not just being in the NFL, but being on that team and being a contributing factor to that team. So that I was very proud of that moment.
I love that. I was going to ask you about another sort of comparison. I do think of like recognition and appreciation. I mean, the fact that you threw that block, like you said, actually today, most people don't even play in the game. That's like throw a block, right? They're like in street clothes, which is crazy. But I was thinking about something you said recently, and I'm wondering, did you get more satisfaction with that Rookie of the Year recognition, or did you get more satisfaction being a small piece? I know you're humble, and so like a small piece of contributing to the development of Lamar Jackson being an MVP in 2019. Yeah. How do you sort of reconcile the two?
No, that's an easy question, easy answer for me. It was 100% being there for Lamar. And the reason I say that is the rookie year in 2012 and everything was amazing, right? You come into the league, you do this, your team is being successful, you win the division. There's so many good vibes. But you don't always celebrate that personal success as much as you celebrate helping somebody else reach their potential. And the reason Lamar was so special for me, and I have, a special relationship with him, is I was able to be for Lamar what I didn't have when I was in Washington. I came in with Kirk Cousins as my quarterback mate of that class. We had Rex Grossman, we had Jonathan Crompton, and there was no one in the room that looked like me. There was no one in the room that had the same life experiences as me. There was no one in the room that played the game the way that I played it. So for Lamar, when he came in, he's got Joe Flacco, who clearly doesn't look like him, doesn't play the game like him. He had me in the room with him to kind of talk through, hey, this is how you read that. This is how we read this. But don't forget that you're Lamar Jackson, and be Lamar Jackson at all times. And I don't take any credit for Lamar Jackson winning MVP in 2019. But the way that our relationship was able to evolve from 2018, where he comes in as a rookie and he's trying to prove himself to everybody, and he would ask questions. But in 2019, I'm telling you, man, when he came in the offseason and he knew he was the guy, and we all knew that he was going to be the guy, our relationship shot through the roof, because he knew, like, I'm not there to undermine him. I'm there to help him. And I didn't have that when I was in DC. So I wanted to be that for him. So I take way more satisfaction in the fact that he has become, I still believe, one of the greatest quarterbacks this game has ever seen. And he will be one of the greats, if not the greatest, when it's all said and done. Getting 7 Super Bowls is tough. Don't get me wrong. Tom Brady really did his thing out there. But I'm very, very happy for Lamar and happy that I was able to be a part of his NFL journey.
I love that. Yeah, he's something special. I mean, he's top 5 every year, if not, even higher than that.
Yeah.
You mentioned your career. What do you think is the biggest misconception about you?
Ooh, man, that's a heavy question. I would say there's a lot of misconceptions that were created. And not my first year. If you look at 2012, it was all great. Everything was awesome. The way I would look at it is, in 2012, I was doing the same things off the field in 2012 that I did in 2013 and 2014. They were just received differently because we weren't winning games. So when you talk about like commercials, you see guys have commercials all the time. Look at Baker Mayfield. Baker's got had 1 million commercials his first couple of years in the league. And when they were winning in Cleveland and he was able to, help resurrect that team and take them to the playoffs, it was all great. But the second it turned bad, then it was like Baker's doing too many commercials. So, like, I understand the fickleness of the industry and how that can happen. But I would say that the biggest misconception about me is probably, man, when I got hurt in 2012, there was no conversations about like why I came back, right? It was all about you just being a competitor. You want to go out there, you want to put it on the line for your team. And I think as the years moved on, there was little misconception.
You're talking about the NFC Championship, why you came back to
No,
that game?
I got hurt. I re-injured myself in the NFC Championship. I got hurt a little bit earlier in the season against the Baltimore Ravens. Haloti Ngata hit me in my knee when I was already down or going down on the ground.
That would be a flag, by the way, at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
I saw that. I was like, that's like,
it wouldn't just be a flag. He'd get kicked out of the game.
Yeah.
It would be a penalty, fine, all that stuff. But needless to say, I got hurt. And in that moment, like, for me as a player, I'm just trying to be out there for my guys. You go to battle with these guys, you bleed, you sweat, you have tears with these guys, their families, their why. I had London Fletcher as my locker mate on that team. This guy was at the end of his career. I wanted to do everything I could to help him go out on top. And when I came back and I played well, we go to the NFC, it wasn't the NFC Championship game, but it was the wild card weekend of the playoffs. And I get hurt again. I re-injure myself and I go back out there and I'm fighting and I'm doing everything I possibly can. And there was a narrative that was created years later that the only reason I did that was because I was afraid of the guy behind me, or I didn't want the guy behind me to get any shine, which was Kirk Cousins. And that was just the furthest thing from the truth. I was just trying to put everything I possibly could on the line for my teammates. And what I didn't realize at the time was there's a time and place for that. And it altered my career forever because of that injury and because of the time that I ended up missing due to that injury and other injuries. But people have to know that I put it all on the line for the Washington Commanders. I put it all on the line for my teammates back in Washington. And I certainly put it on the line for the city. And I always have love for them and just want people to understand that that's where my heart was at. It wasn't anywhere else.
I love that. Reflecting back, just NFL career, is there anything you would have done differently that was within your control? Because there's a lot out of your control, right? Where you go drafted, all that stuff, but like within your, unless you're John Elway, right? And you don't go. Besides that type of stuff, like within your control.
The way you phrase the question is perfect because I have no regrets, right? Some people say, hey, do you have any regrets when you look back? I got no regrets. Listen, everything that happened to me. And it's made me a better person, better father, better husband, better teammate, better whatever you want to say. It's part of my journey. And I love that because I have a better story to tell. Now, would I have loved to be the greatest quarterback of all time? Yes, no doubt about it. But when I look back on anything I would have done differently, the only thing that I would have done differently was I wouldn't have played. And after the injury wasn't the problem. It was how I was utilized after the injury that put me in danger of re-injuring myself. But I was under control of when I came back after the injury. So I'm not talking about after the Ravens game when I came back against the Eagles and played. I'm not talking about the wild card weekend playoff game. I'm talking about the next year. When I came back and I played the first 13 games of 2013, I shouldn't have done that. I should have taken that entire year off because I just wasn't ready to play yet. My leg wasn't back ready. I wasn't going to be the best version of myself. I was still 75% of the player that I could be and 75% healthy, but I wasn't 100% healthy. And I should have waited to come back and play as opposed to doing that. And that was part of this whole campaign. Let me take that back. There was a campaign by Adidas who I was, signed to that was all in for week one. And the campaign really got hammered by a lot of fans, the loud minority of fans, because they didn't like it. They're like, it's, why are you saying that? Why are you doing this? And I just want to say for that, it's like, what player isn't trying to get back to play week one? All of us are trying to do that.
Did it say something or?
No, it just said all in for week one was literally the hashtag all in for week one. And I've seen multiple quarterbacks over the past 10 years since that campaign come out and say the same thing. I'm going to be ready to play week one. And I just want people to know, like, that's not why I played.
Yeah.
I did not play because there was an Adidas campaign that said all in for week one. I played because, once again, I was being a competitor. I was putting it all on the line for my teammates. But I wish I would have had the professional advice or the foresight to know what you put on tape is how they're going to judge you. They're not going to watch the tape and say, oh, yeah, he's only like 7 or 8 months removed from an injury, a total ACL and LCL injury. They're going to say, no, that's Robert Griffin. And that's what he looks like on tape right now. So I would have waited an entire year, sat out all of 2013, came back in 2014 and been 100% myself. And I think that would have ultimately changed the trajectory of my career had I done that, but it wasn't in the cards for me. So when you say the things that were under my control, I should have waited, and I know that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I see that. I mean, we would have seen Kirk Cousins a lot earlier if you did that, right? I mean, there's just the reality of you analyze the game every day, but like it also depends. Is the coach on the hot seat? Do they need results tomorrow and all that stuff? But I agree. I mean, it's like Kevin Durant in the finals, right? Like he should have. In hindsight, unfortunately,
your point is well proven there. And there was a deal of, I didn't understand all that.
Yeah.
In 2012, I was 22, 2013, I'm a 23-year-old young man, no professional experience, no one in my family with professional experience. And our coach was on the hot seat. and he was going to do everything he had to do to help us win games and make us win games. And if that meant, hey, encouraging me to go out there and do whatever I had to do, he was going to do that. And when it came to the other side of it, it was more of pressure. What's worse, not putting me out there or sitting me for a year in another contract type of situation. Yeah. So there's a lot of that went into it. But like you said, for me, I had control over whether or not I was going to play the following year after the doctors cleared me. And I should have known, hey, don't get out there. You're not fully ready yet. And I knew that. I knew I wasn't fully ready, but the competitor in me was like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I hear you. And another thing I was thinking about, I appreciate you sharing that, by the way, because like one of the things I love about your work is like you're a storyteller. You're transparent. I mean, these are things I watch the Pat McAfee show all the time and I see those guys. It's great, but like you're willing to just be open and you've reflected and you're articulate about it. And so I think that resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And, at times in my career, I had to learn to stop being so transparent and stop being so honest in front of the mic. More quarterbacks nowadays, you'll see them, they don't give any great answers. It's on to the next week, or they've got a great defense. And I'm so thankful that, I get to play in this. They're not going to give you that stuff because it can come back to haunt them. So when I got into the media side of this, I wanted to make sure I told guys' stories the right way. I don't feel like my story was told the right way. I definitely feel like that hurt me in my NFL career, and I don't want to do that to guys. I'm all about having fun.
Yeah,
I am. I love fun. I'll say some stuff, that's like, hey, you were close to the line there, but it was funny, right? I'm all for that, but I'm not going to go out here and try to tear guys down. Now, if you go commit a crime and I have to talk about it, we're going to talk about you committing that crime. But if you throw an interception, I'm not just going to kill you on the interception. I'm going to talk about why you threw the interception, and I'm going to talk about what you can do better to prevent those interceptions, because that's
constructive.
Right. It's constructive criticism. That is what the fan deserves. I don't want to be hitting the lowest common denominator of that guy sucks. Okay, thanks. Anybody could have said that, Robert. Now tell me why he's not playing well and what he can do better. So for me, that storytelling aspect is the most important thing, because words matter, man. If you call a player selfish, or you say he's not working hard, or you say he just can't get it done, not only does it shape the opinion of the fan, but it shapes the opinion of the front office. Because guess who else is listening to all those shows? They are. We should be building people up, not just tearing them down. And for me, I don't want to be a part of the tear people down thing. I will talk about what they're doing bad, but I'm also going to try to lift them up, because did you know that only 0.2% of high school football players make it to the NFL? Like, these are the best of the best. We can't talk about these guys as if they're scrubs. They're not. They made it there for a reason. And it's every sport: basketball, football, track, baseball. There's a way to be constructively critical and not destroy guys, or destroy their character, or destroy their work ethic, or hurt them in a way that's unnecessary. And that happened to me. So I make sure that when I do my analysis, I don't do that. I can't police everybody, but I can police myself and make sure that I don't let that happen when I'm around.
Yeah, it's that's a good example. That's 90% of what's on TV. So I love that. I was going to ask you too. I was thinking of, like, if I have a boss, there's two things that I want. One is that they have my back, and right? Like, I just want to know, do they have my back? The other one is, like, I don't mind bad news, but I hope that it is transparent, and I hope it's delivered sincerely.
Correct.
And I heard you talk about the scout team defense, right? Where, like, they put you on that practice squad, which makes no sense at all, right? And I'm just wondering, did you feel like it was communicated the right way?
No, it was not communicated the right way. I think there's a massive problem just in society in general, not just professional sports, but of just like telling people the truth. And when you think about that, people are like, okay, if somebody asks you, hey, does this dress make me look fat? And you say, yes, it makes you look fat. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying like there's a way to deliver that is not only respectful, but also a call to action. And for me, in my time of what was going on in DC, there was a lot of deceptive things that were going on where they could have just came to me and said, "Hey, this is what we're thinking. What do you want to do about it? What do you think about it? This is what we want to do. This is what we're struggling with." Right? If I'm doing a job and they're like, "Man, this guy's really struggling at XYZ," but you don't tell me any of that, how can I fix it?
Yeah.
Right. So to me, that's where we need to more move towards. Like having tough conversations is a good thing, but being able to have those conversations and still walk away with a level of respect for the person that you're talking to, that's a challenge in today's world because everybody feels like they're being disrespected in some type of way when you say, "Hey, you're not doing this very well." But as a player, you want to be coached. I want to be coached. I don't want to be put in a situation where I feel like you're doing things in spite. And I think that happens a lot of times with players. Like, I don't mind a coach putting all of my bad plays on the screen in front of the whole team. I don't care about that. Put them up there. Hold me accountable. All right. But now can we talk about like what I can do to be better there? And
Yeah.
can we talk about why you thought this was the wrong read or why you thought I could have made that throw? And teach me how to do these things because that's our job. Our job is to point out the mistakes and then teach. And for me, I think we can all do a better job of that. There's no need to beat around the bush. Let's have an open conversation. We all know where we stand and we can move forward together. And too many times in sports, that doesn't happen. So you hear all this stuff going to the media about this guy or going to the media about that guy. And you're like, well, we just had a great conversation. Why is this leaking out that we didn't have a great conversation? And to me, that can get in the way of a player's growth. It can get in the way of the relationship between a player or two players or a player and a coach or whatever it may be. There's a level of honesty that we just need to practice and not give all of our information to NFL or NBA insiders.
Right. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that because that's something I think is super, super important. I was also thinking about the time that you were sort of getting in the right headspace and you said you were punting balls and you were thinking about your future and you said, quote, and maybe I'm screwing this up here, but you said, "I'm going to make sure I'm not the reason I'm not prepared.
Correct.
I'm not the reason why I fail." But you also said you made this decision at 6 years old. I'm curious, what did you mean by that?
Yeah. The back half of the answer to your other question about the scout team was basically like, listen, when you're on the team, it's about the team. So that was 2015, I believe. I didn't play a snap in the NFL, but I caught routes for Kirk Cousins. I played on the scout team defense for the team, and I was not a distraction. I made sure that whatever the team needed me to do, that's what you do. But guess what? You do that as a starter too. As a starting quarterback, that's what you're supposed to do, and that's what you do. So I made sure I just continued to operate in that way. So when I had the moment where I was out on the field, punting balls and just trying to get myself in the right headspace. What people didn't realize was in 2015, the other coaches wouldn't work with me anymore. And the reason they wouldn't work with me is because Jay Gruden was the head coach. And if you worked with me, it was almost as if you were working against him. Not because I was a distraction or whatever, but I wanted to get that extra work in just in case my number got called again. I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose an entire year of my NFL career and didn't work on my footwork and didn't work on how I read defenses and didn't work on my delivery and how to throw different balls. So when I would be out at practice, that moment happened because I was just like, man, how do I handle this the right way when I can feel everyone pulling away because they just don't want to get on the wrong side of whatever decision maker made the decision to not play me at the quarterback spot anymore. So that decision I made at 6 was a story I told you about wanting to be the next Michael Jordan. I go out there 3 hours. I'm boo-hooing. Couldn't do the left-handed layups. I go back the next day and I did it. So when I was punting those balls, I was just giving myself a moment to reflect back on that 6-year-old me and say, hey, what would 6-year-old you do in this situation? Well, he'd go back the next day and he'd do it better. So I made sure that no matter what happened, every single time I faced adversity, I just made sure I kept pushing, kept working hard, kept making sure I went back and did it better the next time. And that's what helped me throughout my NFL career, and has that helped me in media, because all that hard work, like I said, it didn't turn me into the greatest quarterback of all time, but it has turned me into a much better father, a better analyst, a better husband, a better brother, a better person. And I'm proud of that.
Dude, I didn't know that was coming for full circle.
Yeah.
Like, you can't plan that. Okay, one thing I just didn't want to overlook. I was thinking about this. I'm a big Ricky Williams fan. Just, that was my Madden guy. Have you followed his career?
Yes, we're talking about Dreadhead Ricky, Ganja Ricky Williams. Yes, I followed his career. I was a big fan.
Your future podcast guest, if I have anything to do with it, Ricky.
1000%. We got to get Ricky on the podcast.
Okay. So I was thinking of, so there's a lot of parallels. You said you played baseball initially, right? I'm like, oh, it just made me think like that. He played like minor league baseball or something like that. So he played for a long time. And I was thinking about 2004. Like, I remember where I was in 2004 when I heard the news, right? Of just like retirement, walking away. So we didn't know, right? Like, social media wasn't as it wasn't what it is today in terms of like the public knowing things, but he took a year off, right? I've been lucky enough to spend a little time with him a while back on the show, and we got to unpack that. But like, I don't want to underscore 2017 for you, because I know like we hit on it, we talked about it, but I almost think like, I know he went to like an ashram and like, there's a whole documentary on this thing, right?
Right.
But do you feel like 2017, like, it is a little bit of an untold story, just in terms of like, I know physically you said you were working out all the time. I think like mental health wise, it sounds like you just didn't stop like training. Is that right?
It's like I said before we got on, you're a great interviewer. So, the question is a really good question, because a lot of times in life, when we find ourselves in a situation that we weren't expecting, it brings into question everything that you've ever done. So for me in 2017, being out of the league, as a high draft pick, like, there's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of pressure on you. But, as a great quarterback, one of the greatest of all time, he said, pressure is something you feel when you don't know what the hell you're doing. Right. So if you've been playing football your whole life and like, you don't really feel the pressure, you just go out there and you perform. But when you don't have a field to be on, a team to lead or be a part of, you can feel lost. And for me, 2017 showed me just how much I wanted it, because I could have easily just said, all right, I'm not going to work out anymore. I had a workout with the Los Angeles Chargers in 2017. It went great. And then they traded for Cardell Jones from the Buffalo Bills, 24 hours later. And I was like, man, like,
is that Jeff Fisher? Like, or who's
so this
it's not Sean Payton,
because it's not Sean Payton.
I'm sorry, not Sean Payton. Who's the coach now of the Rams?
Not Staley. It wasn't Brandon Staley. No, not the Rams. It was the Chargers.
Okay.
Yeah. So Rams is Sean McVay. He was Sean my OC in Washington. That's what who was the head coach, man? I know Wisenhunt was the OC. So it was the running back coach, African-American coach, who had came from Buffalo. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. I was just mixing everything up. So.
No, it's fine. Like, I remember it, but basically Cardell was in Buffalo, and this coach was the head coach, was the running back coach in Buffalo with Cardell. So when I went out there, they wanted to see how I was doing, whether I was in shape, and I had a good time with it. But that's not the story we're telling here, right?
Yeah.
So in 17, after that workout, I got calls from other teams. I got a call from the Ravens, actually, in 2017 to come in and start a preseason game. It was the third preseason game of the preseason, when there were still 4 games at that time. And I think like Joe was hurt. Something had happened to Ryan Mallett, rest in peace, Ryan Mallett. But they needed a guy to come in and start the game. And I'm like, I'm fresh off the street, hadn't been through any training camp or practice, didn't know the offense. I was like, well, if I go take that opportunity, it'll could be the end of my career altogether.
Oh,
So I didn't take it. I sat out the whole year of 2017. And, I vividly remember, I got to tell this story because it is impactful. I vividly remember working out at Miami, and I was on the track because I was a track guy growing up and played track, played basketball, did football. So I used track to help me in the off season. And I was running 400 hurdles, which was my specialty. And there's this workout where you do a 10 hurdle buildup. You run 1 hurdle, you come back, you go run 2 hurdles, right? By the time you get through 5 hurdles, you've run through 200 meters, but you do that all the way to 10. It's gruesome, right? My dad is the one that introduced me to the workout, and very few people do all 10. So I do all 10, and I finish the workout, and I'm like laid out on the ground. My wife is there. I mean, I can barely breathe. My legs weren't really working. It's not a pretty workout. Let me be very clear with you. It is not a pretty workout. And I'm sitting there, my legs are cramping up. She picks up my legs, starts shaking them out like, a great wife would do for her husband. She says, "Why are you doing this?" And, I really couldn't breathe for a little bit. So I took a couple minutes, and she asked me again. She said, "Why are you putting yourself through this? You're not playing right now. No team is calling you. It's past the middle of the season. Why are you putting yourself through this?" And when I did get my breath and was able to sit up and talk to her, I said, "The reason I'm doing this is because, I don't want to be the reason that I'm not ready. And I know that even though I'm not getting the calls and I'm not getting the opportunity right now, this is what I love." So in 2017, it made me realize, like, when all the odds are against you and you've pushed your chips all the way in and you lose, what do you do next? And for me, it was, I'm going to continue to prepare and be ready. And it made me know, like, I knew I loved football, but I wasn't ready to be done. So that year was like a sabbatical year, if you want to call it. I found myself again in 2017. I was able to redefine my focus and what I wanted to do. And because I was out that year, it's the only reason I accepted the Baltimore Ravens opportunity in 2018, because they didn't give me a guaranteed contract. They didn't give me a big deal. It was almost a league minimum deal, just barely over league minimum. And there was no guarantees. And I had to go in there and grind from the bottom to make the team, which most guys in my position just would not do, right? There's a certain level of, I don't want to say pride, but you know what I mean? Like, listen, you are who you are, but at the same time, you have to be willing to put yourself in a situation and bet on yourself. If you're going to bet on anybody, bet on yourself. And I remember I was on the track training with my wife and a coach named Brooks Johnson down in Orlando this time. And the Ravens called me again, like, "Hey, do you want to sign this contract? Do you want to sign this deal?" I looked at the coach and I said, "Coach, like, it's not a good deal. It's just not a great deal." And he said, "Well, is anyone else offering you?" I said, "Well, I had this workout with the Jags and I have another workout lined up." And I said, they're probably going to offer me a contract as well. He said, "But do you want to go to those teams or do you want to go to Baltimore?" I said, "Well, I kind of want to go to Baltimore because I know they got an identity, all the history, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, all these guys. It's a good chance to go be there and play, and compete with a guy like Joe Flacco, Super Bowl champion." So he said, "If you're going to bet on anybody, you should bet on yourself." And I looked at him, I said, "You know what? You're right." And I accepted that offer. So 2017 was a pivotal time in my life. And anytime something gets taken away from you, it makes you realize just how much you want it or how much you don't want it. And I think that's what people have to really look at their own lives. When you get into that tough spot, like, what's your response? If your response is, "All right, I'm out of here," then that was never for you. Now, I played for 3 more years and then I'm out now and I'm doing the media thing. But that 2017 year was pivotal in me doing everything I'm doing now as well. Just knowing, like, when it gets tough, we all have hardship in our lives, but when it really is like you're the bottom of the bottom, what do you do? What's your response? And my response was to keep going.
I think of that. I call it like the moment of truth. Like,
Yeah.
when nobody's watching, nobody's monitoring you. You don't have to you don't have like I guess in boxing, they have like a weight that they got to get to, right? Like, you don't have to step into a facility in a month. I love that. This is a rapid fire question, but I want to pull it forward a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not so much interested in, I'm more interested in your reasoning, less of the yes or no, but I do want to hear both of them. Is there such a is there such a thing as over preparing?
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. To be fast with the answer, right? You can over prepare, like you can overtrain, like there's a schedule that you should lift on. And we all want to get stronger. Like if you go bench press and you're a 15-year-old kid, you want to bench push 300 pounds, right? But if you're starting at 150, you're not going to get to 300 in a week. So you got to hit 3 sets a week, not 7, right? You don't want to hit arms every single day. You're going to hit it twice. And there's a process to get there. So you can certainly over prepare. And I would say for me in this media space, I always over prepare, but that's mentally, right? I have way more information than I actually need. And then it's up to me to decide how I'm going to tell the fan that. It's easier to do that, I feel like, in media than it is in sports. If you over prepare in sports, you can be not performing at your highest level. So
interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting.
That's kind of the way I would put it. It's different in different aspects of life, but yes, you can over prepare.
When you visit teams, I'm curious because, like, kind of trying to relate this for a lot of people. There's a couple of things to talk about. One is when you're visiting teams, it's like when you go for an interview, and sometimes people or the hiring manager, right, they won't give you feedback. In your world of, like, doing a workout, do you get feedback and then kind of go to the next one, or do they just like you show up and you do your thing and you leave, and then they just say yes or no?
Yeah, working out wise, you certainly get feedback, and it's instant feedback, right? We're not, at least when I was competing, we're not filming the weight room sessions, right? We're not filming every single bit of everything. It's mostly on-site coaching from the strength coaches. This is how you squat. Make sure you sit back and sit down. Don't just let your knees cave in front of your toes, right? All that feedback you get instantly. And media is hit and miss, right? If you play a football game and you score 21 points and the other team scores 20 points, guess what? You won the game, right? Instant feedback. Now you can do some things better, or you can, there's never a perfect game.
Yeah.
In media, how do you judge if you won?
Yeah.
Right? You're bipartisan. You're not supposed to be cheering for one team over the other. And when it's all said and done, hey, as long as you don't get fired, good job.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
it's
interesting.
What about you doing the workouts in 2017 for a team like the Chargers or whoever? Do you get feedback on that or no?
No, not really. I would say that when you go work out for a team, you
can tell by their faces.
It's not even that. Like, if you do this interview and you mess up the question, you mess up the question. I don't have to tell you that you mess up the question. If I give you an answer and I'm like, dang, I didn't give that as best as I possibly could, I know that. That's how it is when you go to these workouts. They will tell you, hey, great job. We appreciate you coming in. But they're going to tell you that whether you do a great job at the workout or you do a bad job at the workout. Right?
Interesting.
They don't have a reason to say, hey, that was terrible. If you could only run 5 out of the 15 routes, you did bad. Okay. And if you did all of them, you did good. And that's kind of the way that they handle it.
Interesting. I always think interviewing people who interview other people is the hardest thing. You know what I mean? Like, because there's just the art to it. And you talk about like preparing. And for me, the more I can, it's like writing, you like write something, you come back to it the next day. It's like fermenting and, sort of thing, that sort of thing. And that's the same thing with me. It's like, okay, if I know, and sometimes it might be a little different, but like, if I know I got an interview with you in a week, I'm going to spend every day doing something. And I want that to manifest because, what I watch on YouTube is going to be different from an article I read from 10 years ago. It's going to be different from something I've seen on YouTube. And I'm just writing. And then I'm like, kind of, like making sure that it is there. I also try to think of like, I hate to, I don't know, you've probably seen this, right? Because Dan Patrick, I think, said athletes they're the people that do the most interviews in the world. Like you've done thousands. Let's not even count after the games, right? That's an interview in itself. So I always try to think, I never want to ask a question that you've already answered that I've already seen that is obvious, right? Because it's not your job to tell this. I hate like having to have someone tell the same story 10 times because that's not a good experience. So yeah, it's just interesting. I could talk about this all day, but
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay. So what I'd love to do is kind of pivot to your podcast. Just help me understand, like, how did you
Yep.
come up with the name? What does it mean?
Yeah. So the podcast, YouTube show, on
RG3 and The Ones. What's The Ones?
So it's
Yeah.
RG3 and The Ones. And The Ones is like the top people in their industry. Like, I think people have to understand that for a football player, only 0.2% of high school football players make it to the NFL. So if you've got the greatest of all time, say Tom Brady, but you've got Desmond Ritter, like Desmond Ritter is still one of the ones because he's one of that 0.2% of guys that made it. So the way that I wanted to approach this space is because everybody's got a podcast now, right? So what's going to make you different? And for me, the goal of the podcast is that everyone that listens to it eventually becomes one of the ones, right? You're going to gain so much knowledge from listening to a guy like Gronk, Cam Newton, Adrian Peterson, Tom Brady at some point, or guys outside of football, whether it's a LeBron James, a Steph Curry, whether it's a Lil Wayne, anywhere in entertainment and sports, that's where the podcast is going to go, because I think they have stories to tell about their own experiences that people haven't heard and that they can take and apply to their own life. And of course, we're going to talk sports and we're going to talk the topics that people want to hear about. And they're going to learn things from these guys that they didn't know about them or about their mindset. But for me, it's all about connectivity, right? You can't do anything in this world without the assistance of the people around you. So why not have a podcast where we get to talk with some of the greats at what they do that can actually help that person in their everyday life? That to me is the goal of the podcast. And I know like the description is more football based, but the grand scheme of it is, hey, let's bring people in and let's teach them something that they can apply to their own life to make themselves better.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I love that.
Yeah.
What do you think, like being a great quarterback, what do you think has transferred over to help you become a great analyst and an interviewer?
I think it's what you just said there, right? I don't ever say, man, I was a great quarterback. But I know that I've experienced everything that a quarterback can experience, right? I've experienced the Rookie of the Year and I've experienced the Pro Bowl. The only thing that I haven't got a chance to really dive into is a Super Bowl. And that's why you talk to people who have, right? But because I've had all those experiences and so multidimensional in my own story of football, I'm able to tell guys stories from a different perspective. For example, if a guy grows up with money and all he knows is money, he'll never be able to relate to the person that does not have money. And I see that sometimes in the analysis of certain guys in the industry that are my colleagues. They've always been elite. They never struggled with anything. They never had any hardship to the point of like being out of the league or being a backup or being the backup's backup, right? They've always been the starter. They won Super Bowls. They done this, they did that. So they come across as super critical about everything because it's this mindset of, I could have made that throw. Well, when you're a guy like myself who's seen it from every single aspect, you don't have that attitude. You don't have that lens that you look through because you understand what it's like to be the backup. You understand what it's like to be out of the league. You understand what it's like to be the starter and be the star. So for me, storytelling, as we said before, is very important. And I think telling every side of it is important. And my background has allowed me to see it from different angles. And I'm actually very happy about that because it's really changed the way that I view the world.
Yeah. It's like 10 years ago, you never thought like, I'm going to do a podcast. Like, you're not going to do a podcast. But like, you didn't say this, so I'll say it, but like the ability to process information, like,
right.
One of my friends played college football, and he does a podcast and he talks about like, you've got like 300-pound linemen coming in your face. Like you got to process this stuff in 3 seconds. Like that's the type of stuff. you didn't say it, I'll say it, but like, I think that helps you. Like you had Cam Newton on.
Yeah.
So for most people, having someone like Cam Newton on could be one of the hardest interviews you'll ever do, because
Yes.
I don't want to use the word disarm, but you've got to warm him up, right? Because there's a lot of perceptions of him outside, and he might have a perception of you if he doesn't know who you are. And it took a minute, but you got to a point where I felt like, I don't know if you'd agree to this, but it took like maybe 10, 15 minutes, but like he got to be himself at this one point. He's just Cam now. I think part of it, of course, it's like you play it at the highest level and done all those things, but part of it is that art and science of interviewing. Like you got him to loosen up.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool.
No, I appreciate you noticing that. And honestly, I appreciate you watching the episodes, because, you know, there's one thing to like see the clips on social media, and it's another thing to sit down and take time out of your day to watch the full episode and really see the art of interviewing, but also what everything that Cam brought to the table, and everything, all the nuances. And the way I approach interviewing is, it's not an interview. It's a conversation. I'm not going to have a conversation with the guy on the show, on the podcast, on RG3 and The Ones, that I don't want to have a conversation with. I'm just not going to do it, because now it becomes an interview, and it can become confrontational or whatever you want it to be. But with Cam was so misunderstood, and is still very misunderstood. I had to echo that to him and like let him know, like, Cam's 1 year, I don't know if he's 1 year older, but he's like 1 year older than me in the football aspect. He won the Heisman the year before we won the Heisman at Baylor. And I just had to like, you're a legend, man. You are an icon. This guy really changed the game and inspired guys like myself. And I think when you talk to people that it's coming from the heart and it's genuine, they can feel that. And that's why I think Cam was able to open up on the show, because he knew, as you said, disarmed. He knew, I'm not out to get him. Yeah. I'm here to have a conversation with him and truly show the viewer what Cam Newton is, who Cam Newton is, not try to pigeonhole Cam Newton into what I want him to be, right? Everybody's trying to find these viral moments. It's not about the viral moment. It's about the realness of it. And I think that's what we have with the podcast.
I think athletes probably get, post-game interviews. That's what you get cornered into, right? For the most part.
Like they have those articles written already, and they're just trying to get that one quote from you that can just make it take off. And players are very guarded about that.
I'm curious, when did you have the itch to do the analysts? I'm going to call it analyst and podcast work. Like when did the itch come?
I would say I've only been doing TV for 2.5 years. So after the first year, I only called games. And then I ended up doing like one hit in studio for Get Up in like March 2022. And that launched me into the studio world of media. So I'm sitting there and it's like, I'm on the set on Monday Night Countdown. I'm like, man, I don't have 3 hours to talk up here. Like when I do a game, I can fully flesh out the game. Hey, here's what the team needs to do to be successful. Here's what they're doing. Here's what they didn't do. Let's have a good time talking football. But when you're in a studio setting, it's like, all right, Robert, what do you think about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? And I'm like, well, I think they're going to be better without Tyreek Hill, not because he's not dynamic, but because he's got all these other weapons and they're going to spread the ball around. And last year, it's exactly what happened. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. That's what they did. They were more explosive they were more efficient as an offense, which is what I said. They were more efficient. But then I'm like, oh, and the next guy starts talking. And it's like, the next guy starts talking. And you're like, part of being in studio is being a great teammate. So if you have a topic, you have to stay to that topic. So all of the other things that you have to say, they get lost in the wind. And with a podcast, you actually have the opportunity to have those conversations in long form to where it's not a hot take. I'm not a hot take guy. I will say what I believe and I will present it in the way that I can to the viewer in the amount of time that I have on TV. But through a podcast, I can really get into the nitty gritty of it if we need to, so you can understand the full thought. I'm a believer that sports should be celebrated. It doesn't mean you can't be constructively critical, but sports should be celebrated. These guys are amazing at what they do. Let's celebrate that together. And that's why I wanted to do the podcast, help you become one of those ones in your own life and celebrate sports. To me, that's the perfect combination. And you don't always get that on TV when you're doing Get Up, First Take, Monday Night Countdown, Sports Center, NFL Live. Like, every show has its own flavor, but you know what I'm saying. I felt like 90% of the shows out there are just like, let's talk about how bad this guy is. Yeah. Let's compare this guy to that guy. And it's like, there's so much more to it. And I want to be able to talk about that.
I love that. I was gonna say, like, you have like 5 minutes and then like they go to the next thing and it's like, well, hold on. Like, I don't think he was done actually. You know, I joke around, but like I started like mowing the lawn a few months ago and like doing my own landscaping. And I have it's harder than I thought. Like,
oh yes, it is.
Like, I used to think the guy would just come out here and like blow leaves and leave. Like, yeah, I would see him out of my office or whatever. It's like 6 months ago, I started doing the research, getting recommendations, equipment, you know, all this stuff. And so like one of the questions kind of related to this is like, once you got into it, especially interviewing other people, is there something you learned to appreciate, maybe being on the other side, that you didn't really get to appreciate just playing?
Yeah. You know, like I think I said this to you before, like guys, or if I haven't, I will now. Guys in the locker room don't like the media. Like former players that join the media, they like, man, come on, man. You know how it is. You know how it was. And why are you saying that about this guy? So I make sure I stay out of that fray and I don't make anything personal with these guys. They might not love that I put them 5th on the MVP list, but it's like, yo, fam, you're on the MVP list. Like, I get it. Guys have pride, egos, all that stuff comes together. But for me, when it comes to, what was the question again? I totally got lost on the question there.
Is there something you kind of appreciate now that you're on this side and you're doing the prep and I know you're traveling a lot. Is there something that kind of like you just couldn't see before because you were 100% focused on playing and training? Yeah. There's something that you kind of learn to appreciate now.
I would say that there's it's a twofold answer. Like, one, I know that there's a reason that things have been done the way they've been done in the media for the last maybe 2 decades. Like, since the emergence of social media and the internet and all of that, I understand it. Like, you got to get clicks, you got to get attention for the things that you're saying. So it's presented in a certain way. I just don't like that. And the second thing I would say is, when you are interviewing a player and when you are trying to tell their story, I didn't understand as a player how much as a media member you have to fight against what you're being pushed towards. Right? So there's this thing when you're a player, they say you don't have to answer the question. All right. If I ask you, hey man, what did you see on the interception? You don't have to answer the question. You can simply say, well, you know, I just didn't play well enough today. And that interception was an example of that. And I'm going to go hit the film and I'm going to make sure I come back and I'm going to be better for this team because that's what they deserve from me. Did I answer the question? No, I didn't answer the question, but I gave you a great soundbite. That was accountability. In the media, you don't have to do necessarily what the machine is pushing you to do. Hey, Rob, fact or fiction? Should the Giants start Tyrod Taylor over Daniel Jones? Woo, that's controversial now, right? So I had that question this past week on Tuesday, and I called it a factition. I said it's a factition. What does that mean, Robert? Well, if Tyrod Taylor is playing well and Daniel Jones is hurt, they should start Tyrod Taylor. But because they paid Daniel Jones $40 million, if he's healthy, he should play. They're not going to love that answer, but it's different than what anybody else might say because they're going to pick a side, fact or fiction. And you don't always have to do that. You can provide your analysis in what you believe and not pick a side just because the machine wants you to pick a side, right? So that's what I learned. Like, you don't have to do it a certain way. You can do it your way, but always do it based off what you believe. I'm not going to give you an answer about something or push some narrative that I don't believe in because I'm not a narrative pusher. I'm a truth pusher. I want to seek the truth. So you ask, what is the podcast for? That's what it's for. You become one of the ones. We're going to seek the truth and we're going to celebrate sports.
I love that. I mean, you can notice that. I don't remember the exact first time I saw you like on the machine, but I was like, oh, like there's an opinion. I love Adam Schefter. I've had the fortune to have him on once. Um, like he doesn't like I know he's like colleague of yours, but like he doesn't share his opinion on anything. He just tells you what happened, right? And I'm like, oh, I love it. I always think like, what does Adam think about this? But like,
Right.
it's just the sort of the way I guess
Adam
it's
has
set up.
Adam has so much other stuff to worry about, and so many relationships that he's built up as an NFL insider, that it's hard to give opinions. And if they are
Yeah.
given,
Interesting. Yeah.
and if they are given, they're mostly given from the side of the people that are feeding him information, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I just understand it.
That's
Right.
that's the
You
like you
know,
got to straddle. You know, the funniest thing I asked him, this is like years ago now, but like I didn't even know the answer to this, right? So I was like, is this insider job or whatever you call it? Like, did ESPN give you that job or is it something? He went off. He's like, oh, mate. He's like, I was, working for the Denver Post or whatever, covering the team for like 8 years. I did this. I missed Christmas. I did that. I was like, whoa.
oh no,
Yeah.
he works his tail off. Like, you can't take that away from
No.
Adam Schefter. He's worked his way up. He's done it. He's built the relationships. Now, how he built those relationships, I don't know. I don't know. That's not my business. I don't worry about things that are not my business. Yeah. But he certainly works hard. Every time I see the man, he's on his phone, doing something, breaking some type of news, whatever it may be. He's the, to be quite frank, he's the gold standard when it comes to the NFL insiders and what they do. I've had some insider moments where I have broken some news, but it's not something that I major in because I want to be free to give my opinion on whatever it is and not feel like I'm stabbing somebody in the back because they, gave me some information that helped me blow up. Because that's what Adam has done. He's got relationships that have helped him become the highest paid NFL insider ever.
Do you remember what Cam said?
Honor those.
You remember what Cam said when you asked him if he wanted to be, like you said, he'd be a great head coach?
Oh,
remember what his response was?
I remember what his response was. He said he didn't want to take the time away from his kids. He didn't want to, the process of doing that was not something that he was interested in. So if you remember, what I said to Cam was, well, maybe you could pull a Dion. You can do what you're doing right now. Yep. And then when your kids get older, you can go be a coach. Because I do think Cam is a coach right now. He has a 7-on-7 team.
Okay.
With a lot of guys that are in the NFL from that team now. But Cam Newton has that same bravado that Dion does. Now, Dion's the greatest DB of all time. We all know that. But he could be that for somebody at some point. And I think that would be really cool to see.
That's to me, that's the NFL insider thing. I feel like even when I was interviewing Adam, he was on his BlackBerry or whatever at the time that he was using. And it wasn't even on video, but he's like, hold on, mate, I got some news. Somebody's injured. I'm like, wow, like you got to be 2 feet into that job. Just like Cam, I just thought I respected Cam when he said that. Not that you can't do both, but I thought that was awesome. Let me ask you this. When you interview someone like that, or Austin Eckler or Gronk, the guys that you've had on so far, and I mean this with respect, is this something where you can just hop on and just do the interview, or do you have a prep process for your interview? Because I know you're studying all week, right? But like, do you have a prep process for your podcast interview?
Yeah, I mean, we do. We have like a content sync that we do right before the show. We talk about like, hey, what do we want to work on, throughout the week to like hone in what's going to happen. And the beauty and the curse of doing a podcast is when you do a podcast, it's not a everyday live show. So it's not like you just get to react to what's happening in the moment. You're more so creating new conversations and pushing the conversation forward when you do the podcast. So we work tirelessly with Wave Sports and Entertainment and my production company, Whispering Oaks Production, to make sure we're on the same page of like, okay, this is how we want to present it. This is what we want to do. Every episode will have a similar feel, but like this Adrian Peterson episode that we just launched today was a long interview. He had just gotten off of Dancing with the Stars. He still wants to play. He still thinks he can help a playoff team. Wow. He thinks he's the greatest running back of all time. It's like all these things that he's saying. I'm like, I'm just smiling ear to ear. I'm like, bro, you are like helping a lot. I appreciate you being so honest. But there's certainly a process to get everything situated that people don't see. Now, Could I just jump on and do the interview? 100%. Like, I'm a quarterback. I know how to relate to people. That's our job. Our job is to read people, but I take my job seriously. And like I told you, storytelling is important.
Yeah.
So I want to know what these guys are about, not just what I heard, but what did they say? So I do my research on every single guy so that when we get into the conversation, they already feel like I know them because I've already done the prep. Otherwise, I don't think the interviews would go as well.
Makes sense. With what you can share, who can we expect? Is two-part question. And then who's on your bucket list?
Wow.
And like who, maybe you have someone already on the schedule in 2 months, and I can list that in the article that I'm gonna write, right? That kind of thing.
You can list guys like Vince Young will be coming on soon. Deion Shadur will be coming on soon. CJ Stroud will be coming on. You talk about bucket list guys. I mean, you're talking about like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I think he's got a beautiful story to tell, and one that people would really could take some gems from him as one of those ones. Lil Wayne actually grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, which is where my family is. He's one that we definitely want to get on at some point. Jay-Z, Kevin Hart. I think people want to hear more from the entertainers about what they go through because that lifestyle is completely different than an athlete. And listen, you shoot for the stars, right? So let's get Oprah in this bad boy. We talking about Michael Strahan and his journey and what he's done. There's no person that you can't name that I wouldn't want to have a conversation with on the show, because it's not about me.
Yeah.
And it's not about that one person. It's about the people who are watching. And that to me means like, I want the people to tell me who they want on the show. Like, who do you want to hear from? Could be a rapper, a country artist. Heck, you can bring Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce on the show. Everybody's talking about them right now, but I have a bigger goal. I want to get Lionel Messi on. I want to get Ronaldo on, Ronaldinho, who was one of my favorite soccer guys growing up. So it's not limited to just U.S. voices and names. It's global. Yeah. And I look forward to continuing to grow that reach and have fun doing it.
Is there anything about the show that you think we missed that you think would be good for people to know?
No, like I told you, this show is not about hot takes. Like, you're going to get bold statements. You're going to get great conversations about things that people aren't paying attention to that they should be, that you might not hear on the big networks, because it's not the Cowboys or the Lakers or LeBron James or Dak Prescott. Like, you come to this podcast because you want to have a good time. You want to enjoy and celebrate sports. You want to seek out the truth. And, we've had some success with storytelling. And because of all of my experiences in the 8 years in the NFL, I've got some stories about some stuff. So I just think the people who listen to this, I want them to enjoy it. I want them to walk away from it feeling better. And I'm a motivational guy, man. So every episode, I'm going to drop a motivational saying, a motivational pick me up for the people that are listening, because we all need those daily reminders. And I do that every single day on Twitter and all my other social platforms to just give people something to look forward to. Like, there's so much negativity in this world. We got to give people something positive to look forward to. And I hope that people come away from the show feeling motivated in their own lives to go out and do better.
I love that. And I think it's important for people to know you kind of sandwich the interviews. Like, you've got stuff you talk about that's current, maybe football wise, and then and even on the back end, which I think is great. I do want to ask you, you mentioned the word like living a healthy lifestyle.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's easy to be in shape when maybe you're wealthy, you're single, and you don't have any kids.
Right.
When you've got 4 kids, again, doesn't matter how many nannies you have. It's got, you know what I mean? Trust me, I've seen it. Like, it's not easy. So like, do you really wake up at 4 a.m. or help me understand? Like, are you a routine guy in the morning? Is it nighttime that's a more of a routine? What does that look like?
Yeah. So first, I have to say, for me and my family, or should I say my family and myself, we don't have any nannies. You can hear the kids in the background right now. Like, my wife is the best athlete in the family. She's Estonian, which is one of the Baltic countries over there, near Norway, borders Latvia. And she is amazing. She went to Florida State. She's a heptathlon record holder there at Florida State for track and field, 3-time All-American, three-time ACC champion, and a 3-time silver medalist at the ACC championship. So she always hates when I say that because she doesn't like when I list her accolades. But I just want people to know, like, she's a super accomplished person, and she's raising 4 daughters, and we're raising them together. But she's the one that holds down the fort. And most people would use a nanny, but we like to raise our kids. We want them to come to us, not to go to anybody else. So when it comes to, like, what was the question again? I lost track. Talk about my wife. She's just an amazing person.
We could talk. Hey, we could talk about her more if you want to. How do you pronounce her name, by the way?
It's Grete. So
Grete, okay.
Grete. Everybody says Greta, but it's not. It's Grete.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead. What was the question again?
We were talking about this healthy lifestyle. It sounds like it actually starts with her. And so one of the things that I read was that you wake up at 4 a.m. and work out every day.
Yep. So just for people at home, like, a healthy lifestyle is not a diet. It's not a workout routine. It's a lifestyle. It is literally a choice that you are making. And the reason that I get up at 4 a.m. and work out, now I don't work out 7 days a week, but I do work out 4 days a week and stay in shape for my family, first and foremost, and also for football. But you have to make a decision. Like, if you have children, when you're up or there in age, do you want to be able to play with your kids? Do you want to see your kids grow up? Do you want to not have these health issues because you're not working out and you're not in shape and you have high blood pressure, or you get diabetes because you're eating bad? Like, for me and my wife, we have 1 day a week that we eat whatever the heck we want.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
we go ham.
Yeah.
And I love Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but I'm talking cheeseburgers, pizza, candy, whatever you want it to be. 1 day a week we get to do that. And then the other 6 days we eat right. We eat three meals a day, but we eat right and we take care of ourselves. And we've seen massive benefits from that, because there's this thought that you can't do those types of things and still live a healthy lifestyle. Well, if you spend 6 days out of the week doing it the right way, and you spend 1 day out of the week eating what you want, it's going to balance itself out. So for me, the working out is more so for my family, so that I can be a healthy father and a healthy husband for them. And then on the other side, it's so much easier for me to lift in the morning so that I can be that for them in the afternoon.
Interesting.
Because I have to study and have to do all these different things. If I wake up at 9, well, now I've just lost time to be able to be with my family, because I got to study for this college game, or I got to study for Monday Night Countdown, or I got to go work out because I got to get ready just in case an NFL team calls me. Working out in the morning gives me that time to be flexible and be a better dad, be a better husband. And I cherish that.
I love that. Roughly how many hours of sleep do you get per night?
That's a tough one, because I know that a lot of people will say, hey, you need 8 hours of sleep. I'm probably getting about 6 to 7, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
And there are some nights where I don't get a lot because I have to prep. And we talked about this over preparing. Sometimes I would rather go into a show and say 10% of what I know or what I want to say, but that 10% be fire. Yeah. So there are times when I do get 4 or 5 hours of sleep the night before a show, because I'm continuing to prep, and I value my family time and I value spending time with them. And I don't ever want to sacrifice that, even though it might get me more sleep. I don't want to miss out on my daughter's recital. I don't want to miss out on going to Taekwondo practice. I want to be there for that. So for me, it's like, I'm 33. I'll sacrifice some sleep now so I can be there for my kids and my wife.
Do you have, like when you're about to go to bed, kids go to bed, right? I'm sure around a certain time. With 4, I'm sure it's even harder. We have 2, right? But like, how do you decompress before you go to sleep? And maybe this is a selfish question, because like when they go to bed, I'm like, oh my God, I need to eat something bad, or like I need to watch 30 minutes of like NFL Live or something, right?
Right.
And then I go to sleep. But like that to me is a struggle. I'm just wondering, how do you like decompress to get to bed?
Yeah, I would encourage you to watch 45 minutes of RG3 and The Ones next time. But
switch it up.
What I would say is, for me and my wife, like, we love watching Netflix shows We are normal human beings. Okay. I will never go on Love is Blind as far as on the show to try to find a date because I'm married. But we love watching those type of shows to decompress. You know, we love watching Netflix. You know, I'm a big like Game of Thrones, dang it, what is it? Just those type of medieval shows type of guy. And there's a bunch of them on Netflix that we love to watch. My wife loves Emily in Paris. She loves Friends. You know, all these different shows that just allow us to decompress, sit down, watch TV together, snuggle, right? Get under the blanket. And it's like quality time for us to spend time together. That doesn't involve like going on date nights and stuff like that. And we do that as well, even though every man knows their wife wants more date nights. But that's how we decompress because it's the simplest thing to do and it's great quality time.
Okay, a couple rapid fire questions for you. When we're talking about shows, is there a documentary that has made a big impression on you that you recommend other people check out?
Ooh, documentary.
Do you watch a lot of them or mainly like shows?
No, we watch shows, we watch documentaries.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen them all. Like
Yeah.
that Manti Te'o documentary on Netflix was crazy. Yeah, man. I'm a big Bruce Lee guy. So if you get an opportunity to watch, obviously any of the Bruce Lee movies were incredible, but the documentaries on Bruce Lee have been very eye-opening. His philosophy, his discipline, you know, some of his more famous quotes, be like water, like being able to understand exactly what he meant about those. I would encourage anybody to go watch those because it's can change your life.
I remember seeing a recent one that I thought it was really good. I think it was like within a year or so. What about books? Is there one or two that have made a big impression on you that maybe you give to others or you recommend others read?
I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna sound, you know, very, very Christian, but it's just the Bible. For me, just you can use the Bible and weaponize the Bible however you want to. And I'm very aware that people do that. But just like the 91st Psalms, my parents taught me and my older sisters that, and we recited it every single day before we went to school. And just having that groundedness and knowing like, hey, these are God's teachings and this is what you can do to be successful. Honor their mother and father, you know, don't steal, kill, or destroy. All these different things. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, but there's not a better book in the world that you can read to learn from the teachings and the parables that God has instilled in that book and the learnings from Jesus Christ to really live your life the right way. I tell people this all the time. What's the harm in living your life the right way by the Bible? There is no harm. Yeah. If there is no God, you lived a great life. If there is a God, you end up in heaven. So I would encourage everybody to read the Bible.
Love it. What's in your post-workout shake? Exactly.
My post-workout shake. I mean, I am not a performance enhancing person, as in, you know, illegal stuff. So I got whey protein. I'm a more of a vanilla guy than chocolate milkshake type of guy. So it's going to be vanilla, whey protein. You're going to have a little B12 in there. I'm going to take a couple fish oils and I'm going to call it a day. Right. Sometimes I take a little bit of vitamin E, but as you get older in life, I've heard that vitamin E, you got to chill out on that a little bit. So I take those things to help my bones and joints feel really, really good, maintain my muscle mass if I need it, and give my body something to feed off of after I've hit a nice workout.
I love it. Is there a purchase over the last year or so under $100 that's made a big impact on you?
It's funny. It's probably two, like these ring lights, you know, like for just content creation. Amazing. I suggest everyone get one. And then two, my wife had this has this sticky thing on the back of her phone that you can like put against, you know, any canvas and it'll help. It'll just let your phone stick there. And that's just been life-changing to be able to stick your phone somewhere, record a workout, record a quick video. If you don't have a ring light, I would suggest people go look it up. It's just like a suction cup on the back of your phone.
But it's really interesting. Effective. Okay. Yeah. That's cool. Is there a favorite bedtime story you like to read the girls?
It's funny you say that because I had this hat on, this alpaca hat. It's actually right here if you want to see it. I had this alpaca hat on this past week in West Virginia because it was cold. And, when you were in these booths for college games, the booth is actually open to the field. So if it's 50 degrees outside, it's going to feel like it's 30 in there because you're in there for 3.5 hours calling the game. So I joked that, I've read Llama Llama Red Pajama so many times that I decided to wear its cousin on my head this past weekend in West Virginia. So Llama Llama Red Pajama is certainly one of the favorites of the kids. I was more of a cat in the hat type of guy, but people aren't really liking green eggs and ham anymore.
No, it's funny. Like we have some of the Berenstain Bears, but like, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I read that when I was a kid. Like just like bad lessons.
They just don't read it anymore, man.
No. I love it. I'll have to check that out. I'm always looking for new books. Okay, fast forward 20 years from now.
Okay.
What would you hope Risan, Gloria, Gamea, and Gia say about you as a dad?
Wow. That is heavy. That is very heavy. I would say I want them to say that I love their mom. A big thing for me and our family is we only know that we get one life. So you don't ever want to do something for a long period of time that you absolutely know you don't want to be in. I had that experience in my life. I made the decision to get out of that, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I want all of our daughters to look back and say, my husband treats me right because I know that he loves me, and I know what it looks like to be loved the right way because my dad loved my mom the right way. And that's why I think that's what makes a great father. You love on your daughters, but you love on their mom so that they know what it feels like and what it looks like to find true love.
I love that. If you were to give one or two pieces of just general life or career advice to somebody who wants to make a big impact on this world, what would a few of those things be?
Yeah, number one, it would be don't create a character, be yourself. Right? Don't create a character that you think everybody wants to see, because now you're going to have to be that character all the time. And when you have a day where you just don't feel like being that character, everyone's going to know that you're being fake. So whatever you're doing, media, sports, the next great Wall Street guy, be yourself. It's way easier to be that person every single day. It's way better for your mental health because you don't look in the mirror and know that you're being fake. You are being yourself, and never shy away from being yourself because you make somebody uncomfortable or the person around you doesn't like that version of you. You will find your people as long as you continue to be yourself the most. So it's, be yourself and believe in yourself. Like I said, if you're going to bet on anybody, it should be you. Invest in your dreams. That money that you have put away, save it, of course. But if there's an opportunity that is going to be geared towards something that you've always dreamed of doing, do it, because you're not going to regret that. What you will regret is never investing in your own dreams, but always investing in somebody else's. So trust yourself, believe in yourself, and go get it.
I love it, man. I really appreciate just your thoughtfulness and all these responses. Again, like I was talking to some people about this, like what makes you so good at what you do now? And it's a number of things, but it's like charisma, which there's a book called The Charisma Myth. I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard of it, but it's really like, how do you elevate your communication skills to have more charisma? Right. But like you kind of you have that, especially on TV. It's like the charisma and the storytelling and the authenticity, man. When you combine those three things, like people want to lean in, you're able to connect with people most people can't connect with. And so I really appreciate you just leaning into this and your openness and thoughtful responses.
Oh man, I appreciate you saying that. I'm about to take you with me everywhere because you're just throwing all these compliments around. It's like, hey man, this is a good vibe right now. But no, it's I've been through some things in my own life, and not anything near what some people out there have been through, but it's shaped my vision of how you should approach life. And I hope that I can continue to share that with people.
I'm looking forward to putting this together. Also, if you need a forward for your memoir, let me know.
That's actually a good one, because I mean, everything you're saying, I'm like, bro, that does sound like a pretty good forward right there.
I actually think the stuff we talked about in the middle, like 2017, 2018, there's a lot. It's that clip that Adam, that interview did with Adam, the guy from Penn State. There's I don't know if you've seen it, but there's two clips about that. There's a shorter one. Man, that is a book in itself. And you don't need to be 50 to write it. I think there are so many people who can learn from that. Man, I hope you do it, because I hope to see it.
No, man, I appreciate that, and I will take that into consideration for sure. You know, part of the book writing thing is there's so much more of a story to continue to build. So I don't want to write it too early, but I agree with you. It doesn't have to be when I'm 50. So
no, yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, looking forward to putting this together. If you need anything in the meantime, just let me know. Thanks again for doing this.
If you have any follow-ups, let me know.
Okay. Thanks, Robert.
All right, brother.
Have a good one.
God
Cheers.
bless.
Bye.